What's up? What's up, guys? Chad or Adonis, what's up?
Good morning.
GM.
How are things going? Are you guys pumped up? I feel like it's just been kind of a crazy week with everything going on. It was just on Monday that we had that uh, Discord space with the Polygon people, and that was really cool. It feels like it was like 3 weeks ago already at this point, but it was just the other day.
Yeah, it's been a big week. A lot of exciting things happening right now.
Yeah, same. Lots going on. Market's so crazy too. Definitely a pretty exciting time, just with everything going on beyond THORChain specifically, even.
Yeah, Chad, what's going on there?
Wait, I missed something. What's up?
What's happening to the
Which chat?
banks, Chad? I don't care which Chad. What's happening?
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
just chat in general.
I wasn't sure which Chad you were referring to.
Sometimes it's
I don't know.
like
It
it's like you
seems like what's
guys,
going on is exactly. Seems like what's going on is exactly what Bitcoin, what Satoshi was thinking about in 2008.
Yeah, I mean, you have literally have a system that's like you have a financial asset, which is USD in this particular case, where a government creates it, mints it, gives it out to people, goes through the whole process, and then you have individuals who decide to like run systems on top of that. That you are kind of like, in some level, you as the government, you're kind of like obligated to some degree, I suppose. Other people would argue against that, and they'd probably be correct, but to like make sure that they all fail, right? And so, particularly in SVB's case, like there was a cascading effect that was worried about effectively destroying many of the community banks rather than like the big giant banks. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, the government does FDIC insure all of the money for big banks, but only some money for the smaller community banks. I think that's the part of the issue.
Yeah, I've seen people talking about that, especially like, if a small bank collapsed in a state, yeah, that probably no one's really going to care. Regulators or FDIC, they're not going to be like, oh yeah, we're going to come in and give you guys full coverage or anything like that. It's going to be uh, people with big losses, and then all right, you got to move to preferred bank, you got to move to the big bank in order to get out of this sticky situation you're in.
Yeah, in particular, this situation is like because it was SVB, which is, I think they hold like maybe half of startups' money, VCs and companies. It would be like if they did collapse, like it would be such a hit to just like entrepreneurship and innovation in the country. It would just like it's non that would not be a good thing for the country as a whole. So I guess they're stepping in and paying deposits and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're just updating some numbers on a spreadsheet, and everything's completely fine. So
We saw
Just
there
a
was liquidity
reallocation.
problems, so we added a couple more zeros at the end of the spreadsheet. I hope that solves it.
That's one way of going at it. Well, thankfully, we're trying to build. This is like this. This is one of the fascinating things about like DeFi versus TradFi. Is that like TradFi is not doesn't use Darwinistic measures to determine which systems are good and bad, right? It doesn't really matter if you design a bad bank. The bad bank will continue to function within some reason that the government determines to pick who the winners and the losers are within that context. But in DeFi, there's no government to pick. What is the winner, what is not the winner. In the end, what really is just like a Darwinistic system that just picks the strong survive and the weak do not. And so things that float to the top are going to be extremely valuable, very resilient, and long-lasting financial instruments. The things that don't float and sink to the bottom are just going to go away, just like most of life has gone away through the Darwinistic process. So it's really interesting to see, like, once we have enough time and exposure and experimentation, that we'll eventually get to system. We'll find a handful of like financial systems that will work very well for the long term and be very resilient and reliable. It won't require government to make it quote unquote reliable.
So, getting down to business for the week here, lending. Chad, lending is finally It's actually on it's on StageNet right now.
Yep, it's on Stagenet and it's on mainnet technically. It's actually on. It's not enabled on mainnet, but it's the code is running. It's there. Yeah, we merged the last like major PR for lending for in 107. There's still some bugs to fix and some things to add here and there, but like relatively small things. And we did our first like kind of testing on StageNet, and we basically had our first Bitcoin loan right on layer one Bitcoin, not some sort of wrapped asset, not some sort of like trusted federation system or whatever else it is, but like legitimately layer one Bitcoin loan in a decentralized manner. That's an industry first. That in itself should be a huge news, to be honest with you. But the industry is what the industry is. The media is what the media is.
It is to us. It seems like a big deal. So you actually did the honors of that first one, right?
It wasn't me. I think actually it was Pluto was the one. We did on a video call. We all just jumped in, myself and a bunch of Nine Realms people, and I think Pluto was the hand that did it in a sense. So it was I think it was like $100 collateral, and I think you got like a 1% collateralization ratio at the configuration that we had at the time. So I think you got, I don't know what the hell that was, like $20 back or something. So I don't know. I don't remember the actual number, but like the actual numbers don't really matter so much because those are all just play numbers anyway. Those aren't like representative of what mainnet would be, but it was good just to actually go through the process of opening a loan and closing it fully.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Does he get to keep the $20?
Well, he's got to pay back the $20 and he'll get his loan back.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
And he paid it back and then got his collateral back. So like everything
back.
functioned. Yeah, it was pretty cool to witness.
Yeah, and the whole thing worked. Kyle, you were there, I think, right? You were there.
Yeah, I saw it.
You saw it with your own pair of eyes, and you can, if you don't believe us, you can look on chain, see all the transactions happening, right? Like on the block explorer, see it all happening, which is just like kind of amazing, right? So I mean, I'm super pumped with this feature. I honestly think there's a chance. I'm not saying this is definitively true, but like there's a chance that lending could be as big as the AMM itself, or maybe even larger in terms of like the market demand for such a thing. Like trading between Bitcoin and Ethereum is obviously like hugely important and very valuable to the industry. Bitcoin loans themselves is a whole different beast, right? So to me, this is like probably one of like the biggest feature we've ever added to THORChain's history since we launched the network itself.
Yeah, man, everyone's really excited, and especially to test it. So, yeah, I don't know if you have any more info about the actual like testing. So like, I don't know whether people will be able. People can like just do it right now on StageNet if they so chose, but I'm not sure if there's like a greater push around like gathering community members to test, or if you're just kind of going through the testing framework, the regression framework that was recently put together. What the kind of process is there to actually get this thing out, and whether like the community can just come in and start testing and seeing if it works or not.
Yep. Yeah, I think technically anybody can do that now if they really, really wanted to. Although I would say, do it with caution because it is obviously a very, very, very alpha feature. Most of the work at this point, to my understanding, is about more testing and validation, of course, but also building the like monitoring around the system to make sure that once we launch it on mainnet, like we have monitors around the system so that we can notify ourselves and the larger community when something is awry. That's one part of it. Other part is building the appropriate like dashboards or UIs so that people can check on the state of the status, the overall health of the lending system itself to understand, if it's going well or not going well, or either direction, whatever that is. And of course, there's documentation as well, which I know that some people with the Nine Realms team have been working on some documentation around this concept as well. And then also integrations as well, which we haven't even really started with our partners quite yet. Iridanis is on stage. You could probably comment on this, but we haven't really started talking to our partners quite yet about lending. Not to my knowledge, at least. We're probably waiting until we actually get the thing launched and, showing it works and all that kind of stuff first. But it's starting to get like, I know that some UIs are starting working on it. Like I think THORChain's already got a lot of the work done. I know that Shapeshift is interested in integrating the lending concept within their UIs as well, and kind of getting more integrations like that way as well. Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of work to be done. The code is kind of the hardest part in many ways, in a sense, but there's still a lot of more work to be done. So we still got a ways before we can actually launch a mainnet.
Yeah, there's also probably a Thor wallet who I'm sure would be doing that as well. I see that they're in the chat, and they just said they'd probably be launching it there. Also, Lens, LENDS is going to be launching lending, like their own front end for lending, basically. So I know they're interested in that. So there's probably and then obviously that's only in the THORChain ecosystem. It's like, then it's also on us to start going out and shipping it outside the ecosystem in whatever wallets, protocol, like whoever wants to put lending on their front end can do so. We just need to be making the connections to make that happen. So that's like something that we're actively working on, is then figure out how, like, who are we shipping lending to, like who can make use of this feature. Are we gonna start talking to wallets, like so yeah, like super exciting. It'd be great to get in every single wallet in the THORChain eco that we're connected with already. So that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the scale of this feature definitely is huge. I mean, just the demand could be so massive. I mean, if you even look at something like Aave, just on Ethereum being like, really one of the most used massive protocols in all of DeFi. And like their strategy wasn't to get into existing wallets. their strategy was just like, hey, here's something that we made, and takes off. So both sides are so bullish. Like, yeah, like of course all the THORChain ecosystem projects are going to get this out, and that's huge. But then getting it into, who knows, Trust Wallet, whatever, like all these other big things over time, if they go that route, even better.
Yeah, if you actually go to DeFiLlama.com right now and just go to the homepage, and it organizes like all the DeFi projects via TVL, like the number one DeFi app, I don't consider Lido to be DeFi, it's liquid staking, so it's a different thing. But the number one is MakerDAO at 7.8 billion, and then Aave is at 5, and then Curve's at 4.5 billion. So the first two and largest DeFi protocols by TVL, right, is two lending designs, two lending concepts, right? Before you start getting to the actual AMMs like Curve and Uniswap and that kind of stuff. So like that kind of to me shows me that the market is, heavily like MakerDAO is almost twice the size of Curve, right, in terms of its TVL. That tells you that the market is there's a strong demand for lending in the market in general, and those two protocols really only surface or only support like a specific ecosystem, obviously being Ethereum. So if you take the idea that there's a huge demand for lending in the industry, there are entire ecosystems they're completely void, Bitcoin being obviously the largest by a landslide. And you take the idea that lending itself within the CeFi world is completely destroyed and destroyed itself. And so now there's this like, what is it, 30 or 40 billion dollars where it was in, whatever the quantity was in BlockFi and Voyager and Celsius and like all these guys. Like if you just look at the market analysis of this, like to me, this is why I feel like this lending protocol could be much larger than the AMM itself, because all the numbers point to that, at least from the numbers that I'm looking at right now. So, I'm quite excited about it. This thing's going to be pretty amazing. Not to mention that, like, okay, you got Maker and Aave in there, which total is right now is about 12 or 13 billion dollars in market cap between the two of those guys. They have a lending design that is obviously very, very different and structured very, very different than the THORChain design, right? They have like variable rate interest rates. They have liquidations, like all this kind of stuff that people have to be very stressed out and concerned about when they open up their loans. THORChain's design is radically different, structured completely different from how those are structured. And in my opinion, like the design is going to make those borrowing on those platforms be so much more, less in demand on those platforms, because there's a newer system that gives you a better quality loan terms of the attributes of what they're capable of getting out of this system versus MakerDAO or Aave. And again, MakerDAO, like people use MakerDAO predominantly just to 3x long their Bitcoin, their Ethereum position. Right? This is just on largely the Ethereum asset for the most part. Like the vast majority of loans are for that particular purpose. You apply the idea of what MakerDAO does as a way of 3x long your ETH position, and then you apply that to Bitcoin, which is obviously a much more significant asset by market cap, like orders of magnitude. What is it? I'm looking up real quick. Yeah, so the market cap of Ethereum is like 210 billion, and Bitcoin's at 512 or something like this. So it's about twice it. So double the size of MakerDAO, plus supporting other assets as well, like Ethereum, and theoretically we could support Doge and things like that downstream if people want to. Like that's insane to think about. Like the setup that the network has, the demand for this feature, the demand for lending across multiple chains and doing it in a better way in terms of like how tasty it is as a borrower and also CeFi is pretty much dead at this point. And there's really only one player in town, right, for Bitcoin loans especially. So just like everything about this thing just makes me so bullish, like insanely bullish.
Yeah, dude, 100%. And then especially like being a protocol, that's where the huge advantage comes in, because then we could just start shipping it elsewhere. Like, we don't, it's not like we just have to grow our platform. What we have to do is make sure that other people are just utilizing our protocol. So it's like, it's a really good spot to be in for sure, where we can just continue to just creep outwards and to make the right partners and just be in the right spots to meet users where they are. So like I think it's going to be great once we finally get lending like live. It'll probably be quite a bit in testing, I'm sure, but we're in the race now. Like there is like it is not, we're not just waiting at the starting line anymore. We're actually like warming up, getting ready. So it's right there.
Absolutely.
Also, there's a flywheel between the three main pillars, like the AMM, savers, and lending. Because if lending is the one that like first really makes THORChain just explode up in adoption, then that's inherently going to drive value to Rune, which is going to open up space for savers, which then as people want single-sided yield, then that allows the AMM to be better. So if that happens, and scaling the security of the network, of course, like that was kind of the initial thought behind this particular design, right? So the things that the success of lending would solve separate to itself is kind of incredible too. So definitely like a huge impact.
Yeah, because if you launch this lending protocol, people have to swap to get into the loan and swap to get out of the loan. And so when they're doing that, they're both adding liquidity, or like swap fees being accrued to the LPs themselves, to the savers, and to the nodes. They're also burning Rune as part of the process of swapping through the derived asset as well. So you're actually burning Rune and never minting that back within that context. So you're creating a more demand for swaps. Why you'd want to swap on THORChain? It's not just about being able to get from Bitcoin to Ethereum or something like this, which is obviously incredibly important, but it's also being able to open up a loan. So inherently, you're going to increase the swap volume of the network, right? Increase the yield of the network for both savers and LPs, especially for LPs, because as people are market buying Rune out of the pools, you're removing Rune from the pools, and then you're basically burning it to open up your loan. Well, that naturally creates a upward price action. Market buying asset and then burning it will naturally create upward price action on the Rune asset. So as an LP, because you're leveraged Rune as a dual-sided LP, you're going to have really, really great yield as part of that, just naturally speaking, right? And then as the price of Rune is performing well, the security is getting deeper, to what Thoreau was just saying. And also inherently that means that as the Rune's price is increasing, the pools are getting off kilter in terms of the balance between the asset and the Rune. Rune's too valuable. So what happens then? Well, then we just start arbitrage bot starts sucking in Bitcoin, sucking in Ethereum, sucking in Doge, sucking in Litecoin. All those exogenous capital gets sucked in the networks naturally through the arbitrage process. And so the number of Bitcoin that we hold naturally increases as a part of that as well, right? So like this thing is such a cascading effect to just like that everybody from nodes, LPs, savers, like just get benefit greatly from it.
Sick, Chad. Cool. So I guess we could talk next about Polygon a bit because we had that discussion on Monday. We had, I mean, if anyone didn't see it, Jack from the Polygon biz dev team came on. He's someone that we met at ETH Denver, and a relationship that we definitely want to build and explore, and get Polygon connected to THORChain because we think that there's a pretty big potential there for just like a really good partnership. So we're like still trying to figure out the shape of all this stuff right now. And like right now, it's kind of looking like what we want to be doing is connecting to their ZK EVM. It's also looking like the node costs are much less than anticipated. So Chad, I don't know if you've looked into this at all, but it's actually fairly cheap to run a Polygon ZK EVM node. But obviously, there's concerns about the chain. It's not even in mainnet right now. It's very new, so it's like there's some concerns about that. But it's like the actual infrastructure cost of the POS chain seems to be comparatively very low. It kind of runs off of the ETH daemon as well. So like as a Polygon ZK EVM node, you don't need to run the prover, which is like the very computationally expensive bit, which is what makes these nodes so bulky. But like obviously just observing the blocks, you don't need to run that bit of things. So like it seems like the infrastructure cost is much significantly less than even the Polygon POS chain, which is obviously like good news for the integration, because that means there needs to be less volume coming through just to make it economically worth it. But right now just exploring what's in the Polygon ecosystem, and it like if I were to ask the community for anything, just like say like doing some research into like what's in Polygon, where THORChain fits in, because their ecosystem is very 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 modular. Like they're all of those projects are very tooled for EVM, very tooled for Polygon, and obviously we're very cross-chain, but we want to fit in this ecosystem as well. So like we're just trying to figure out like what wallets do we want to be in, what dexes do we want to be in, like who are the strategic partners in like the Polygon side of things to really like make an integration worth it and to get the maximum amount of value out of something like this. So that's just what we're exploring right now, like the shape of how everything's going to go. So yeah, just kind of just exploring and figuring out like how we fit in the Polygon ecosystem and how Polygon fits in ours. But I think like ZK EVM seems to be the strongest way forward, and probably more where the space is going towards. It's a forward looking move, going into the layer 2 space like this, but much more forward than integrating something like Polygon POS. So yeah, what are your guys' thoughts about that whole discussion and just Polygon and THORChain in general?
I think, I'm super excited. Like this is kind of the first time that we've gotten this much interest from an external protocol. I mean, it's not the first time, but it's one that, like, obviously Polygon being a top 10 coin, it's a very prominent and exciting space right now. And especially because THORChain doesn't have any L2 exposure, and obviously we don't have any ZK exposure. It's a very exciting, like, dynamic. They've basically talked with us and said, we'll connect you to projects in our ecosystem, which is huge. And I think, that's really how these kind of protocol integrations should work. And so I'm excited to see how this plays out. I mean, obviously it's not a done deal. Like, it's not in mainnet right now. As Familiar Cow is saying, it's like, it is a cheap piece of infrastructure for now, but obviously the cost will scale as the chain grows larger. It's also kind of more of a complicated piece of infrastructure because it runs its own ETH daemon as well. So we just need to make sure, like on the Bifrost side, that nothing wonky happens there. So it's definitely I would say far from a front like a done deal. We definitely need to do more exploration on the infra side. But just in terms of the collaboration already that we've had with the Polygon team, it's very exciting. And so, if we can have support from their engineers to run the infrastructure, if we can have support from their BD team to get us plugged into not only projects in the Polygon ecosystem, but their team is plugged into a lot of projects in crypto and even outside of crypto. Like they're connected with the Robinhood wallet team, for example. Like obviously that's a pipe dream, but who knows, right? Like anyway, it just seems like a very exciting setup, and if we can get it safely done on the infra side. And there's also the weird thing about how on ZK EVM, the gas asset is not Matic, it's ETH. So it's a wrapped version of ETH. So we just need to think about, I think that is fine on in the Thor node code, but that's just another kind of idiosyncrasy that we have to make sure that is going to work. So yeah, it's a very new space, but it's exciting. We're going to take it slow. We're going to make sure we're going to get plugged into the ecosystems that we want to and the projects that we want to, and that the infra is stable and not going to break things for the rest of THORChain. That's obviously the most important thing. But for now, it looks really good, and we're going to keep on working with the Polygon team to explore this.
Yeah, I think for me, what gets me excited about it is just as Eridanis mentioned, like the Polygon team seems to be very bullish on this, and the energy is behind. It's not just on our side; it's also on their side. And it reminds me a little bit how like Terra was when we added Terra. It was hugely successful. We had like $100 million in liquidity added within a few weeks, whatever the hell it was. We get a lot of interest in our project, and we kind of pulled over some new people into our own community. It just was very good for the project. Unfortunately, it didn't end so well, obviously, because Terra had some issues. But it was very, very beneficial when you have their ecosystem and our ecosystem working together and like collaboratively launching some new integration versus something like like Doge maybe or Litecoin or whatever that maybe the market cap is high, but there's no kind of like cross talk going on in matter speaking. So I think for me personally, I get much more excited about projects that are excited to get for us to be added to them, right? Like projects like like Polygon, like Dash, like Radix, like even smaller projects that have a lower market cap. I'm more excited about adding those because the community behind those would get more excited, add more liquidity, do more swaps, become rune holders themselves, like all of that process. They're much more valuable to me than something like maybe Binance Smart Chain, which is really large in market cap, but I'm not really seeing a lot of like calls to action from the BSC community to to be added to THORChain. So I'm not really sure how much benefit we're actually going to see from something like that.
Yeah, I mean, just to speak on that a little bit, sorry, the BNB chain folks are definitely they definitely want to be helpful and get us connected to as many projects as possible in the BNB chain eco. So I think there's a big difference here in that like Jack from Polygon, he's a THORChad, like he understands exactly like how what THORChain, and I know that he understands like what THORChain's actual capabilities are. It's not a bridge. You can do swaps. There's yield and things like that. Like he understands how THORChain plugs in. While maybe the BNB people, there's just so many things going on that they just maybe don't know, or just like there's so many people building like disparate things in their ecosystem. But they seem very keen to connect us with a lot of different projects in their eco. So definitely like the BNB chain people are definitely no slouches. Like they're definitely trying to do the work and get us plugged in that eco as well, and make the right connections and make the right strategic partners there. So it's not like they're just completely dropping the ball. Although like that's been kind of the case in the past. We're definitely like talking with the people at all these ecosystems and like trying to make sure that we're lined up to have a successful integration.
Yeah, it's tough because I mean the ideal state is that you launch a new chain integration and you have a bunch of dexes and wallets in their ecosystem that launch day one as well. and yeah, we have seen some interest like from the BNB chain people. We have gotten connected to what's the one, the new Solidity
Yep.
fork on BNB chain. We did get connected with them. So we have the touch points like the BNB chain ecosystems. We're getting the touch points in Polygon. We obviously have touch points with the Dash community as well. So it's like I want all of them, but it's like, it's just tricky because of the like important design aspects of THORChain. Just like the cost to the validators like is really top of mind when we're making these decisions. So it's like, and it's hard to predict, right? Like we thought we had good connections in the Avalanche ecosystem, but that really fell short, which was unfortunate. And so it's like, what we really want to do is be confident that the teams that we're working with are going to like walk the walk and talk the talk. They're talking the talk. If can they walk the walk? Can they actually get us plugged in and get us users? Like that's like the biggest thing that like the Nine Realms team right now is trying to vet, and we're trying to get as close to like commitments on these sides. And then we like need to like relay that to validators and come up with like a formal proposal so that they can choose like the right path forward. Like if I had my magic wand, I would integrate Dash, I would integrate Polygon, I'd integrate BNB chain over the next 3 months, all of them. But we just need to be realistic about the economics of it. We need to make sure that validators have a healthy stream of income, that they're not losing money. So yeah, those are all the things that we're thinking about. It's like a tricky balancing act that we're doing, but we have a lot of exciting opportunities. So we just need to make sure that we're steering the community, like just kind of making our recommendations, telling them information that we're getting from these ecosystems, and then allowing the validators to choose the right path forward.
Yeah, if you have like a favorite project in one of these ecosystems, someone at these projects, or you work for one of these projects, wallets, dexes, aggregators, whatever, definitely get them in touch with us because, just getting that intro and starting to explore the opportunity. Like now's the time where we're really trying to just like talk to everyone that we can, and just see who the right partners are. So, if anyone here has those kinds of, people like that would like to connect to THORChain's liquidity, then like now's the time. Just put them in touch with us. Just have someone DM the THORChain Twitter account, and we'll get around to it. So yeah, bullish on integration season, Eridanis. A lot of integration stuff happening.
Yeah, there's a shit ton right now. It's super exciting. We're getting interest from. I mean, what's really cool is that like we've kind of been focusing a lot on wallets, and there's a few other like kind of kind of different kinds of projects that are coming into the scope of things now, like protocols like Unizen and LiFi, that are kind of like bridge aggregators. I mean, Unizen is moving, like they've been EVM only, but they're moving into UTXO land, and we're basically helping them do that. And they're going to have BTC to EVM swaps baked in, very quickly through THORChain, which is super exciting. I mean, teams like Rango obviously already live as a bridge DEX aggregator, and LiFi now I think working with the THORSwap team, I believe, to integrate their API and route BTC trades through THORChain. So. So the protocol space is definitely expanding. We're talking to a few others as well, and then this whole ordinals thing is really creating a lot of cool interest from the traditional ETH DeFi NFT kind of ecosystems are now have a renewed interest in Bitcoin. And how many times have you seen on Twitter the last like couple of weeks, like, oh, I want Bitcoin, I have ETH, like how do I do this without going through a centralized service? And like THORChain is always the answer. And so this is super exciting. We have like 5 or 6 ordinals wallets that we're talking to right now, and like that's just super exciting for me because that's going to bring in new users, like users that haven't even heard of THORChain, have never swapped cross chain in a decentralized way, and like that's like fresh blood, baby. We love it. So that's super exciting for me as well.
Yeah, I keep mentioning this, but THORChain as a crypto on-off ramp to its ecosystems is super powerful. Especially you think about an Ordinals wallet. Their target audience is people who trade NFTs. Where are people who trade NFTs? They're on Ethereum right now. Like that is where 99% of these people are. And obviously, what's the only route between these two chains? It's us. So the THORChain as that crypto native on off ramp is like a super powerful narrative, and it's like that's how these projects are going to grow themselves, is they need to be able to offer those on and off ramps into their ecosystem. You think about single chain wallets. If someone has a Doge only wallet, how are they going to get new users, especially when you're talking about real native assets? There really isn't a lot of new Doge people like coming around trying new wallets, but getting people from other ecosystems to join with a crypto native on off ramp, that's pretty powerful because you can control that whole stack, and that's all powered through THORChain. So I mean, just another use case for THORChain. Like you could think of the swap itself as the onboarding into the wallet or offboarding the wallet. So it's like just another layer of the stack that THORChain can help power and help enable these other wallets and ecosystems to actually get new users themselves. And speaking about the integrations you were just talking about, Unizen looking like they're about to launch like any day now, basically.
Yep. Yeah, they've been moving. So they're gonna do like just BTC to ETH and I think AVAX swaps for day one. And then I'm actually helping them. They're going to be writing their own DEX ag contracts, which is cool. So I think right now the big players in the DEX ag space are like THORSwap and Rango and XDeFi have some contracts as well. So I'm just excited to see other players join that space that aren't like native to the THORChain ecosystem, because it's just like we're expanding like this use case that's super powerful, and just like getting more interest from it. So yeah, they'll be writing out their own DEX ag contracts to get whitelisted. Oh, and another protocol, Symbiosis, has also been working with us, reaching out to get their protocol plugged in as well. So yeah, man, the protocol space is super exciting. It's not one that like Nine Realms has really been getting after too hard, just because we've been focusing on wallets, because they already have the UTXO EVM support and Cosmos support. They already have the asset infrastructure, and so it's much easier to just like plug that in. But just like the renewed and like kind of honestly the cold inbound that we've received from protocols is super cool.
Just compare that to like even like a year ago.
I know, it's insane.
It's insane. Like I remember, like honestly, like a year ago, it was almost like pulling teeth to talk to projects and try to explain to them the value of Bitcoin or something silly like this. It's like pulling teeth, if you remember Iridanis. And,
Oh yeah.
And a year later, and we go to ETH Denver or whatever, and we have tons of people that are talking to us and interested in integrating in one form or another. And just like what a difference a year makes, and I can't imagine we're going to be in another year.
Yeah, it's been like the last year has been pretty like when we really started going after integrations like last year. Like yeah, I mean, Chad, we were on so many conversations where we would just like hang up and then like get on another call, just like huddle and be like, "What the fuck was that?" Like just like they're just like I'm not going to name any names, but just some of the conversations we had where there was just no, I guess, and it's fair, right? Because like some ecosystems are just maxis on their own ecosystems, and they're just like, well, we don't want native assets, we want wrapped assets on our chain, and just like it's just a difference of opinions, difference of visions. But I really feel like the narrative of THORChain and the narrative of cross-chain native assets is really ramping up, and like people are like kind of coming back and being like, okay, no, this is valid, and this is important, especially when like all these centralized services are just shutting down, and we're trying to decentralize everything. Like we're here to do it, and we'll welcome them with open arms whenever they're ready.
Also, a good point that Chad made is a lot of other ecosystems painting themselves into a corner, just code wise. I don't know if you want to. You talked about this like earlier this week. I don't know, forget what channel this was, but talking about how a lot of other protocols are kind of painting themselves into a corner in being able to support the things that as in they won't be able to support all of the things that THORChain supports, because obviously like we have a much better like overall design. So yeah, what was
Yeah, I mean that's just poking upon the idea that like if you're building something even in the cross-chain sense, where you're building it via smart contracts or something of this nature, you are coding yourself into a corner. Like you're pigeonholing yourself in a way that you cannot undo that, right? Or if you do undo it, you literally have to throw away everything that you have and then start from from literally ground zero. And I remember I'm not going to mention the project. I don't think it'd be nice, but like there was somebody who was doing I think it was lending or something like this. I can't remember. It was years ago, and they built something for I think it was Binance Chain, but they did it in a way that was like that implementation would only work for Binance Chain. And it was just like you instead of building something generic that you could reuse for Binance Chain, but other systems as well, you just built yourself. You coded yourself into a corner. You had to use this particular implementation for this particular chain, which is just from an engineering perspective is fucking stupid. And so anybody who's going for the lower hanging fruit of EVM chains, which is very easy to write some Solidity code and just deploy it because you don't have to worry about anything else, right? Like even within the context of THORChain, like when you write a smart contract that does AMMs, for example, that all you're really building is the business logic, which is not very much. It's like maybe 1,000 or 2,000 lines of code. Like it's not very that much. THORChain itself, like the swap logic of THORChain, is actually quite simple. Similarly, it's only maybe about 2,000 lines of code, the actual business logic of the AMM itself. And then we have all these things about like Bifrost and observations and like gas managing and TSS and like all these other things so that we can connect to arbitrarily any other chain we want to. And so like ends up being that like 98% of the code or 90%, some huge amount, 95, 98%, whatever the hell the number is just around being able to be flexible and so that we can connect to and integrate with arbitrarily any asset or any chain in more or less in the world, including even really difficult chains like Monero, CryptoNote chains. And so like we've spent the extra years that it takes rather than going for the low-hanging fruit, which we actually had that conversation with the low-hanging fruit, the Ethereum only thing, like many years ago, and we dismissed it out of hand fairly quickly. So we knew we didn't want to solve like half of the problem. What we knew we wanted to solve the actual root cause, or the actual root issue. And so we spent years to design and develop the infrastructure around building this kind of chain agnostic infrastructure, which is the vast majority of the code that we have. It does exactly that, and very few of the code actually does the AMM stuff. And then once we have all that, we've solved like the really difficult problem, which nobody else in the industry has actually has solved other than forking what we're doing. We can apply that same kind of flexibility and power, and then apply it not just to AMMs, but to earnings products and lending products and order books, potentially perpetuals, right? Perps, like that just opens up things that we can do that nobody in the industry can possibly even do what we do unless they fork our design or fork what we're doing, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, man. So earlier this week, like related to this, I was in a space with Chainflip, listening to them. I'm especially curious about this, given like the results of this like last weekend, right? Where there's mass panic about USDC specifically, and Chainflip, their core design is to pair everything against USDC, which seems to me like obviously I'm very interested to see what they're building, and obviously like it's something that we're gonna want to connect to in the future probably, but just like thinking about the design from from first principles, right? You're thinking about like the censorship resistance of the protocol. If something were to happen with USDC or Circle or something like that, the Chainflip is in a very bad position, and that's the positioning of their protocol, where they accept that as like a base level risk of like, hey, if USDC all of a sudden starts getting censored, or you can't move it without KYCing or something like that, it's not that big of a deal for THORChain, and obviously like it would be bad for the LPs in THORChain, but the actual network itself will just continue to function as normal. You take that same scenario and you push it over to like something like Chainflip, something that's designed around that token. They're in a very uncomfortable position where they're, every single one of their pools is in a very unfavorable position, and that's just because of the base design. So it's like a lot of protocols are not thinking about the long-term sustainability and just the censorship resistance, and always preparing for the worst, and being like an actual like unstoppable protocol. Not even just talking about like pitting yourself into a corner with smart contracts, but just like the overall infrastructure and design of THORChain, designed from the beginning to be able to resist some type of attack like that.
Yeah, not to get too brutal on chain flip here, but the whole USDC, so as you mentioned, they use USDC as the base asset for all the pools. So USDC paired with something else on all their pools, which is bad in a lot of ways, right? For one, the IL that you would experience and having every pool being one asset is volatile, one asset is non-volatile, the IL is going to be the highest as possibly can be, right? For all of their pools, right? That's, not necessarily the greatest thing to start with. Second of all, is that because they don't have their own asset that's in all the pools, how are they going to accomplish the idea of block rewards, right? They can't just like print USDC and dump it in the pools. That would be silly for obvious reasons. So they're probably not going to have some form of block rewards for the LPs. So the yield of the pools will be very, very, very low because there's no block rewards. The IL is going to be high, right? So there's going to be a lot of losses in that sense. And then on top of that, with how they're accomplishing what's called JIT, which is just-in-time liquidity, you basically have two different types of LPs. You have the active LP who's smart and runs servers and basically is a form of MEV on top of the network. And people who can run that kind of infrastructure and have that understanding, they can make maybe they can make decent money. But the passive LPs are getting like just ripped from, right? So you have massive IL. You have passive LPs who are going to get, screwed out of a lot of money because the active LPs are taking it from them. And then on top of that, you don't have any way for them to earn an income. You're earning income solely based on the swap fees, which for a brand new network is probably going to be not a lot of swaps happening in that network, at least in the early days. So it's just like from an LP perspective, how they're positioning this protocol is going to be, it's going to be rough. It's going to be rather rough.
Yeah, we still like them though, and obviously appreciate what it is they're building, because this is not an easy space to be a part of. So best of luck to their team for building out their product, and hopefully they actually actually slated to launch this year sometime. So hopefully they're obviously successful in that. I wish them the best of everything. Good luck to them in their future endeavors. Last thing, Chad, would you like to talk about the UTXO halts and that postmortem? Pluto posted a postmortem. I should actually probably pin that up here on top of the space.
Yeah. So as people remember, like we had paused trading and paused a few of the chains, the UTXO chains. I received word from a couple of friends of mine who notified me of a significant exploit on a bunch of the UTXO chains. I think it's like over 200 of the UTXO chains were affected by this particular thing. Bitcoin was not one of them, and I think Doge was not one of them as well in the end. But so I got word of a significant issue, but people were pretty tight-lipped on the details of like what the actual exploit was. They were trying to keep it quiet so that they could patch it before things got out of hand. And so, but we just made the choice to think mostly about the LPs of those chains and make sure they didn't lose their funds, but through some sort of attack. We are the only DEX for those exchanges, for those chains. So like, obviously we'd be like the primary target in an exploit like this, to be honest with you. And so eventually the information came out about the details of the thing, and it's called rabies. That's the name that the Halborn team has named it. It effectively allows an attacker to cause all the other nodes in the network to like basically crash and die, which then leaves only you and your nodes that are mining blocks for Litecoin or something like this. which allows you, in theory, to have like a 51% attack onto those chains. In addition, there was talks about some RCE, remote code execution, as well from another separate bug, but in the same kind of field. That ended up not being as big of a deal because you needed authentication. So unless you were running your Litecoin node without authentication publicly, then you would have been fine from the scenario. So it wasn't that those other bugs weren't as significant as we initially thought. But still, like the idea was that we wanted to make sure we protect people's funds. That's obviously the most important thing to us by a long shot. So anytime we receive credible information from credible individuals that there could be some major exploit on a given chain, we'll obviously do our best to protect people's funds and do all that stuff.
Yep, and I believe it didn't apply to Doge, where that was on pause early because when we got some further details about the exploit, it was determined that it was not applicable to that, I believe.
Yeah, it's because Doge was actually, if I'm not mistaken, and I hope I understand this correctly, that the Doge was actually discovered of this bug like a year ago, and it was patched, but then nobody thought to check the other UTXO chains. I think it's what happened. And so they're like, oh, wait a minute, this issue could be applied to Litecoin and other things as well. Oh, shit. Bitcoin was patched by accident. Bitcoin actually had this bug for some period of time before, and it made a code change that fixed this bug inadvertently, just by accident. And then the other UTXO chains didn't pull in the upstream. And so that's why it affected some UTXOs, but not Bitcoin and not Doge.
Cool. Thanks for the info on that. Yeah, if people have questions or like comments about that, then for sure come up. And yeah, I guess we'll open it up now if people just want to come up and ask about anything. So again, what did we talk about today? We talked about lending, we talked about Polygon, ZK EVM potential integration, just talked about integrations in general, UTXO halt, and yeah, just lending, I guess. So yeah, if anyone would like to come up and ask some questions, like now's the time. You can ask about anything, not just those things, but yeah.
I was actually hoping that Bob would join us. I would have loved to have a conversation with him.
Bob, so I actually spoke to this. I had a podcast with those. I think we're talking about the same Bob.
The Bob McFadden or McFarlane or whatever the hell his name
Yeah,
is.
there's like two Bobs. I was on a podcast with them like 2 days ago. They're really fun actually. They talk to me with like voice modulators on. It's pretty entertaining.
Any questions from the audience? Q&A? Ask me anything.
Yeah, I got to Thor pill them a little bit. Well, they're definitely like rune bulls and stuff like that, but just like just talking about the stuff that the stuff that we talk about here every week, basically just lending and just everything that we're excited about, integrations and everything. So it was a fun podcast. Like they're pretty small podcasts, but good group of guys. It's fun talking to people in the crypto community. That's why we started doing these in the first place, because it's just like, otherwise it's just people like tweeting at each other. It's not really this like actual conversation, but like I feel like Spaces is just a good medium because you can just actually just hear other people. So that's why I started doing these in the first place. So,
by the way, while we're on the topic of podcasts, my friend Preston and I have been talking about putting together a podcast ourselves where we do kind of technical or economic deep dives into various projects and kind of analyze the inner workings to explain how they work and how they don't work if they have some sort of critical flaws in their implementation or designs. So be on lookout for that. That's going to be coming out the next couple of weeks, I think.
That's great. Have you guys recorded episodes?
Nice.
I think we're going to record our first episode today. I think later today. We got the name picked out. We got the domain bought. Got the like logo and cover art made and all that kind of stuff. And so we still have to build like the website and we figured out how to like actually do the recording itself and like editing and all that kind of stuff. We figured out a lot of the stuff. It's a little more to do, but probably the first episode will probably come out in the next like week, maybe two.
Awesome. Looking forward to that. That'll be cool. Is it going to be like weekly or just kind of like as it comes?
More as it comes. Like him and I are both obviously builders in the space, which is part of the reason why we wanted to create it, is because like a lot of people who are, you know, YouTubers or podcasters or whatever, you know, they don't have the experience or expertise that myself and my friend Preston have, and so we kind of feel like we can offer a good insight. But well, because we're both busy with our, you know, THORChain, and I'm busy with THORChain and THORChain, and he's busy with this thing called Upshield. You know, it'll probably come secondary to that, and so we'll probably have an episode come out like maybe once every 2 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. That's the cadence we're trying to hit.
I can't wait to listen to that. You guys are just fun to be around. So it's like it'll just be like listening to two old friends just argue at each other.
Yeah, Preston and I actually, like, we don't agree on many things. We just see things very differently between the two of us, which I think is going to make us pretty good and fun hosts. We argue a lot. We like make fun of each other a lot. Like, we're really good friends, but it's gonna be more, you know, more combative in some sense. And I think that's just gonna make a more interesting and fun show to listen to some people like argue and yell at each other about.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we might have. He's a kind of against the idea of like, not your coins, not your crypto, right? He holds this idea that we shouldn't be doing that because most people are too dumb to basically do it, which he's not wrong and he's not right either. It's going to be interesting. Like, we're going to have some good arguments back and forth between him and I.
I brought up Ghost Rider. Hey, Ghost Rider.
Hi, everyone. First, I have to say congrats for this amazing product, and I'm really impressed about the team and all this. Yeah. So I have two questions. First, I hope you understand my English isn't that good. So we have a second reserve, the 60 millions from Rune tokens. Can you maybe a little bit explain what you want to do with this, or yes?
So that was the 60 million Rune tokens in the treasury.
The standby
right now, supposed to
reserve.
go for the reserve. Yeah, the standby
Exactly,
reserve.
yes.
Yeah. So that's to be determined in some sense. There's really two use cases for it that we have in mind so far. One is just putting into the reserve itself, which would increase the block rewards, and which is kind of nice. The other option is burning some of it, and you heard that right, burning some of it. And by burning it, it allows lending to scale faster. So the lending system, like, and how it caps the amount of loans that it allows to be opened, is relative to the amount of like missing Rune from the 500 million cap. So right now we're like missing about 15 million Rune. This is largely from the kill switch. And so we take that number 15 million, we divide by 5, we got 5 million Rune. That's the amount of collateral in terms of value the network will be allowed to be taken if we just launched lending right now. And so if we burnt another 5 million or 10 million, we would add to that, right? And so if we wanted to allow more loans to be taken out, we can start just burning some of that Rune and allowing lending to scale more and faster. Whether that actually happens or not, I don't know. It's a conversation we've been having in the back end, so to speak. Nothing's been determined about what the final resting place of that is going to be. But for right now, it's either going to be deposited into the reserve or it's going to be burnt to help scale lending.
Okay, thanks. Second question, it's a little bit more technical one. So about POL. I see when savers come in, they will take Rune out. So there is no Rune pressure when savers go in. And the POL will kick in when the synth is about 50%. I don't know exactly the number. That my question is that that is a non-event of the Rune price, Is that correct? Because savers take out the room because it buys the other asset. Sorry, no. Yeah, you can explain better, but it's a non-event, no?
So it depends. So if the sims that are at 50% utilization right now, and then somebody were to deploy some Bitcoin to savers, and then the POL would enter some rune into the pool, which basically sells some rune to do so. And so it's basically like the entering savers creates some buy pressure, POL creates some sell pressure, and they effectively cancel each other out in terms of the context of savers. So there's like it is a non-event in that sense.
Yes, exactly. Exactly, yes. But what happens?
Conversely,
what happens if the room price drops without adding savers? So we will hit the 45%, and then the reserve kicks in. The POL kicks in, and they'll sell rune. And couldn't that be like a little death spiral?
No, it wouldn't be a death. So there is some reflexivity for sure. It does in a sense, like if we're at 50% centralization and then the room price decreases, which means the centralization goes from 50% to 55%, the POL will then start adding rune to the pool, which causes some sell pressure to push it back down to 50. So it does create some reflexivity for sure, and both in the up direction or the down direction, depending on if the POLs were moving. If the room price goes up and up enough that the POL starts withdrawing, that you start creating some buy pressure. So it does create more reflexivity, but it's not a death spiral, right? Like the analogy I have in my mind is kind of like if you go to a bar, right, and you're hanging out with your friends, you don't speak at a normal speaking level. You speak louder than you typically do, like, in a empty room with your friends, right? Because there's other people talking, everybody's, talking above each other and around each other. So you're talking louder, but you're not screaming. You're not like, it's not like you walk into a bar and all of a sudden, like, it's just like nobody can hear anything at all because everybody's screaming at the top of their fucking lungs. So that would be like a death spiral that like it causes everybody just to increasingly yell louder and louder. That's not what happens in bars for the most part. It's kind of conceptually some of that. Like you only get a death spiral when the added pressure that you're creating on the price is greater than it was in the moment it was before, and that's not the case with this kind of situation. It does create reflexivity for sure. That's true, but it's not wouldn't create a death spiral.
Okay, thanks. Yes, yeah, makes sense. If you have time, can I ask a third question?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, third question is about LP. Is that correct? When I think about LP, I think with savers, it's like a leverage position. So if room goes up, and now at the time there are more savers, not more, but a lot of savers, and not that much of LPers. So it's like a really leveraged position for the LPs when room goes up or down. Is that correct?
Yeah. So as a dual side LP, you are taking a leveraged position on Rune in some sense, and how much leverage that is relative to the quantity of synths as a percentage of the pool. So the greater the quantity, the more leverage you take on, and the less the quantity, the less leverage you take on. So that's effectively what it is. So the POL's job, in some sense, is to cap what that leverage is, which is we're capping at 50% synth utilization.
Okay.
And it's 50% for that kind of like, neutral thing we were just talking about one before, with like, if you add savers, it creates some buy pressure. If you add POL, add some sell pressure, the two of them cancel each other out. That's why it's 50%. If you were to do less than 50%, do it 40%, it would be a net negative on the Rune price. And so we don't want to do that. So 50% is where we're at. POL kind of creates a cap of what the leverage can be for a dual set LP. And that's how it's designed at the moment.
Yeah, I actually just pinned up a tweet on the top here. I put out a tweet earlier this week about just the modern LP dynamics. There's definitely people who still don't understand the synths leverage concept. So definitely, like, bookmark that, or just save it and read it later if you can. It helps explain a lot about why the synths add leverage to the LPs, and just how all that works. Like when is value taken from LPs and given to savers, and when is value taken from savers and given to LPs. So obviously that's a function of the rune price. So I talk a little bit about like why savers, so why dual APRs are where they are at this point. Like what? Okay, so here's the question that I'll ask right now: why are dual LP APRs so low at this very moment? Now there's two reasons for that. First being synths / savers. So with increased synth leverage, because there's more savers, and the synths is the primary driver of this, but the primary demand center for synths is savers. So I'm just going to kind of use those interchangeably. As there's more synths on the network, as Chad just said, there's basically increased leverage on those LP positions. So they are more price sensitive to Rune. So the other part of what I was just saying, the second part, is the Rune asset price. So you can think of it, the Rune Bitcoin price. How much Rune is there in one Bitcoin? And right now it's at lows since the network started, basically. 2-year lows for like the Rune Bitcoin pair. And the way you can think of it, when the Rune Bitcoin price goes down, more value has to be taken from the dual LPs and given to savers, because the network always ensures that it has 100% of the liquidity available to make sure all the savers can get out all of their L1 asset 1-to-1. And so make sure it has all the liquidity needed to always back every single saver, but it does that by taking it from the dual LPs. So when the Rune asset price gets low, we're going to see low APRs. And that's because that calculation the calculation looks back. All these APR calculations, they're always backwards looking. And obviously all it can tell you is what was the performance over this time period. So there's a time element there in like looking at what an APR actually is. So you can have a 30-day APR, look at the last 30 days. You could have a 180-day APR, look at the last 6 months. You could look at it for the past year. You could look at it since the pool started. And obviously, like, that number is not going to be the same as like if you entered an LP, because you're just looking at two different things. So especially when the Rune Bitcoin price is low, we're going to see very low APRs, because that calculation on most of these front ends is inclusive of that synth leverage. So it says like, oh, okay, what is the change of value of the pool itself, the entire pool, not any individual's position in the pool, but the pool itself over the last 30 days or the past 180 days or year or whatever. What is basically the slope of this line, and where will it be in 1 year? And that is, given that same slope, like what would it be in 1 year? And that is what the APR is. So with like Rune Bitcoin being very low, value being taken from the dual LPs and given to the savers, that makes for a low APR. Now, if you look at a case where Rune goes up versus Bitcoin, that's the complete opposite, where the savers are giving their value to the dual LPs because less liquidity is needed to fully back those the savers' synth positions, right? So value is taken from the savers and given to the dual LPs, and they're going to see much higher APRs, like in times where Rune's really moving against Bitcoin. So it's all a function of the Rune Bitcoin price, and definitely check out that thread if you're kind of confused on what I mentioned. Hopefully that can explain it. And if you got more questions about that, or if anyone has questions about just the LP dynamics and kind of how all this works, definitely check it out. If you're an LP, like, this is stuff you really need to know to to stay alive out there, because like in my personal opinion, you don't want to be withdrawing a Bitcoin Rune LP lower than the ratio at which you deposited it, because at that point your value is just being taken up by savers, by people who are basically insured against the value of their Bitcoin, and you're the insurance. So like, yeah. So just some things to think about there. Hopefully that kind of explained things a little bit with leverage.
Yes, thanks a lot. I understand, and yeah, also congrats to your team also, and yeah, thanks a lot. Just a little question. So if I understand correct, if you go up, for example, in the BTC Rune pool, the leverage is bigger, or have to be bigger than the impermanent loss. Isn't that correct? If Rune goes up against Bitcoin, for example.
Yeah, if Rune goes up against the other asset, then the dual LP will gain more value out of that. The Saber is unaffected. They actually give some of their they don't lose anything in terms, in like Bitcoin terms, but they give up like the more of the total value of their liquidity units to the dual LPs. So that's kind of where the leverage plays in, because you could think about it like all the pools are made up of Rune. Like, you know, we're talking about the Rune Bitcoin pool. It's all made up of Rune and Bitcoin. So it's like if Rune goes up, but you know half the pool is priced just in terms of Bitcoin, then all that extra Rune value basically just goes towards the dual LPs. So that's kind of where the leverage comes into play there. So like Rune Bitcoin LPs are price sensitive based on like the ratio of Rune and Bitcoin, and they need to be thinking about that and thinking about synths and savers.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, one of the interesting things is that in the case of IL, it doesn't matter which asset is moving up or which asset is moving down, you experience loss, right? But in the case of because of synths, in our case, if Rune's price is going up, you don't experience loss, you experience gain. And if Rune price is going down, then you experience loss, not gain. So it's like IL goes in, it doesn't matter which assets move up or which assets move down, but in synths it does. And so if you're experiencing IL because Rune's price is plummeting, then you also experience positive aspects from synthetics. So it's kind of interesting play on the numbers.
Yep, exactly. And I've seen there's been so many questions about this, especially about the APRs being low. Remember, APRs are strictly backwards looking. Like they past performance obviously does not guarantee future results, and that's never been true, never will be true. So when you're looking at an APR, you're looking at what did happen over a given period of time, and not what will happen over the unlimited period of time that's in front of us. So that's kind of what I think of when I think about APRs and just like all that stuff. Just remember, like what you're looking at is a past projection. It's like looking backwards.
Yeah, APRs is interesting because I mean, in this moment we're kind of like in the bear market, right? And so it's a natural thing to happen when you get a bear market is you get less trade volume and less of that kind of stuff. We're seeing that across the board, across all desks in the industry, right? On top of that, you also held the Rune prices down, like from its all-time high being I think $21. Now it's at like $1.50, whatever the number is. And so then the block rewards that you're putting into the pool is now worth a lot less, right? Almost 20x less than it was, when the market was at its all-time highs. And so you have that effect as well. But then counteractively, you also have what the work that Eridanis was doing, and then in general, and you, Kyle, about getting more swap and trade volume, just natural swap and trade volume, through just getting more integrations like Trust Wallet and Unizen and all these things. And so that's why recently we've been seeing all these all-time highs, even in a bear market, which is kind of crazy to think about, but it's true. Like we recently saw that the income for pools, more than half was from swap fees, versus when we were at our all-time high, a year ago, or the hell it was, the swap fees was maybe 10% or 15% of the income for the pools. So we're seeing an increased quantity of swap volume happening there just through the integrations alone. And then on top of that, we're also seeing increased liquidity in terms of number of tokens into the network, right? We're almost matching the all-time high of the number of BDC in the network, even though we're at like the bottom of the bear market, which is just like, that's just nutty as all hell. But that's just the reality of the situation. So like from a fundamental perspective, like we're performing extremely well. Like, I'm actually quite proud of what we've accomplished in the last few months. And so like while some numbers are down, like, you know, dual side LP numbers are down, or just the room price is down, or whatever. Like if you step back and just look at the fundamentals here, it's extremely strong. And all those other numbers that are like currently down, I think naturally will over the long term should be reflected.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge. I mean, it's amazing to see over half the fees coming from, or half the earnings coming from fees. Yeah, I mean that's like eventually, like someday, like yeah, it might be really a high proportion, right? Though the funny thing is, I guess if Rune were to pump, that would actually go down, right? Because then you have the block rewards being so much more valuable. So there will be an interesting dynamic there as things turn bull. But yeah, I mean, totally agree. Of course, like very much really positive signs and a great place to be in the depths of the bear.
Right. So if you were to launch lending tomorrow, just say, and people started buying millions of Rune, just pulling it from the pools and then burning it, you're gonna have this like multiple factors of, yes, you're gonna have the Rune price pump, and yes, you're gonna have the percentage of income from the pools coming more from the block rewards than the swap fees. But then you also, at the same time, you have all these swaps happening in the network to open and or close their loans, which is also going to increase the number of swap fees that's happening, and also cause more arbitrage costs to do more arbitrage because there's more organic swaps and trades on in the network. So it's like there's like so many facets that are being moved at the same time, but all in the same direction.
Cool. Last thing, I guess we'll hear some words of wisdom from Jimmy the Otter. Hey, Jimmy, what's up?
Much appreciated. It's good to be here to give one of the last opinions. You know, I am a THORChain maxi, and it's just good to hear your guys' voice during this time of turmoil, to see a project that actually accomplishes its goals. But you know, I am recruiting for the THORChain Special Forces. I'm asking all believers to come and join the commandos, because we are in the trenches, and this is a war to talk about THORChain. We got to get on the rocket ship, and we got to get to the moon. And how do we do that? Well, we're going to get in the rocket ship, and we're going to hear the birds go caw-caw, 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 caw-caw. Yep.
Yes.
Wow, inspiring.
Thanks, Jimmy. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, I guess we'll see you guys next Friday.
We can't, the more we say it just devalues what we just ended on. So let's just wrap it there.
All right, guys. Good talking with you again.
All right.
See you guys.
Yep. Peace.